Hello, hello. Welcome to the 35th episode of BINJ Live. I'm your co-host, Jason Pramas, Executive Director of the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism. And let's see, I'm going to point in the right direction today. And over there is...
I'm Chris Faraone, and this is an interesting one. We've done a couple of themes. I mean, that's what around reporters and stuff. But this is like us trying to coalesce with other reporters around the country who are doing similar programming around a topic that is suddenly, dare I say, popular. But before we get to it itself, I think our guest is important to hear. So Fatema Ahmad from the Muslim Justice League, and you're based out of Boston. Can you just tell us, like, in general, about the work outside of this and what your organization does, and when it's not, particularly looking at surveillance cameras back?
Yeah, hi, I'm Fatema Ahmad. I'm Executive Director of Muslim Justice League. We've been organizing here in the Boston area for about 10 years, and our organization is really focused on everything that's come out of the war on terror, which we're in the 25th anniversary of that this
Yay.
year, which is really heavy and directly connected to all of the surveillance that, like you said, Chris, is, kind of, becoming popular in this moment to oppose. But for our organization, we know that there's two sides to the war on terror. There's the war itself, which in the past few years has escalated so severely in Palestine and Iran, and other locations, Lebanon, and so on. And then there's the domestic side of that, which is a lot of policing and surveillance infrastructure, built on Islamophobia. So for us, as a frontline community that's heavily surveilled, we fight surveillance, like, not just because it impacts us, but because we know Islamophobia is being used to justify it against everybody. That's really, like, the major way that in the past 25 years, surveillance has expanded in this country.
It's interesting for you. I mean, it's kind of I'm prepared to talk about the topics, but that's really heavy. I mean, I of course, I'm 47 years old, and my entire professional career. Jason's laughing because he's got some ears up. But my entire professional career, covering everything that I've covered, from even frankly music and venues. Right? We were just talking about a surveillance-related concert story to what we're talking about today is in the wake of 9/11, and I think this is kind of like you can't really fight racism unless you understand what came before the civil rights movement and slavery. Here we are. So why don't you just tell us about? We actually did a whole story about FISA, about international warrants, and recently. Can you just tell us broadly, in the founding of your organization, kind of, since there's so much that the wake of the war on terror could go, what are those kind of bullet points that you said, okay, these are the things we have to really drill down on?
Yeah, I mean, initially the organization launched because Boston actually became a pilot city for a new type of counterterrorism program called Countering Violent Extremism, which nowadays probably everyone hears that term more frequently, of being called an extremist, because nowadays everyone's a terrorist, everyone's an extremist.
We're all
But
extremists, yes.
yeah, it's like, it really, really a lot of that starts with our community, and going way back before the war on terror. But that programming was really launched by the Obama administration as a way to, like, identify people before they supposedly commit an act of violence. Now we're seeing, the Trump administration is taking that to, like, a whole other, level of policing people's ideologies. But there's everything from, like, behavioral policing or behavioral threat assessments to fusion centers, which, there's, I think, about 80 fusion centers around the country. We happen to have one of the biggest in the country, BRIC, the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, which, I joke is like Regina George and Mean Girls, like, who hasn't been victimized by BRIC or surveilled by BRIC? So BRIC
I had
is
to
one
mute it.
of
I was laughing so hard.
Oh, go ahead, laugh, Chris.
No, it's like, it's actually a great example of how we think about organizing as Muslims. Like, we're a really tiny community, and for us, the best way to go about this is to build solidarity and show people like everything from ICE, to these fusion centers came out of the post 9/11 fervor to like expand policing. And a lot of it, we're the tip of the spear of like really horrible policies that get pushed and then end up impacting other people. So yeah, CVE, countering violent extremism, fusion centers, especially BRIC, general policing and surveillance and like counterterrorism kind of policing, and the way that local police work with federal law enforcement, like FBI joint terrorism task forces, ICE task forces. That's a lot of what we've done on the domestic side. And then again, I'll say 100 times, like the actual war itself is our primary focus in the past few years. So we've also done a lot of, organizing around Gaza and Iran.
Jason and I, of course, think with media brain. So, I am interested in, because I think it's so the work that you all, we were talking before this is, of course, we have reported on stuff that you have done. BINJ isn't one of those organizations. If somebody's done it, that's great. We cite the sources. We might look at it ourselves, the same thing. But, we've seen a lot of this. I know you file Freedom of Information Act requests for BRIC related stuff. The short question is, how much have you found that the general public cares? I mean, this is the kind of, and I don't want to like give a loaded question, but I will, because I always say it like this: like people watch, the Minority Report movies, they see it. Oh my God, you freak out about. But then whether it's the Muslim Justice League or us, we tell you it's happening in your city. It's not often the same response. Now that is my reaction. What is your, and also how do you get the word out, and to who and how?
Yeah, no, it's such a great question because surveillance is not typically like the sexy topic that people want to think about. But I think there has been a significant shift in like the past 10 years. Like I would say before 2020, even talking about policing in a really radical, revolutionary way, folks were like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you trying to change these things? With 2020, there was just such growing awareness of like how deep these issues run, how systemic it is in the US, and like more concern around policing in general. With surveillance, there's this weird thing happening now where people feel like, there's nothing I can do about it because there is so much surveillance. What am I going to do? Like go off the grid? And there's also a lot of people in this moment who are like, I don't want this. I don't want these data centers. I don't want AI in every aspect of my life. Like it's reached a tipping point where I think people are angry and everyone feels surveilled now. It's kind of like, I remember the moment when TSA introduced the full body scanners, and a lot of people were like, oh, I don't want to do that. Muslims were like, where have you been? We've been getting like full body checks every time we go to the airport. I'm sorry, now you guys have to get these body scans. So there's always this tension of like, certain communities are not just surveilled, but like really impacted by it. But it's great if everyone is really starting to see like, yeah, it could impact you. It is really intrusive. And like, we could all fight back. Like the fights against data centers and license plate readers are really exciting right now.
Jason, you were looking at some of the intersecting areas in particular. And also, we by the way, I just want to say, and we have particularly not gone right to flock because, first of all, the occasion, and that will be, putting clips out from this interview, is National Week of Action Against ALPRs, and that's automatic license plate readers. And I always feel like such a hipster, we were on but truth is we really were early on. And I was just looking at some of our early reporting, and it's really interesting. Some of our first ALPR reporting was the toll gantries in Massachusetts. They said that the state said that if you had a transponder, they weren't going to take your license plate information. We not only found that was not true, we found more than 1 million license plates data attached to people's personal home information exposed on a server from a private company that the state hired. And we told them about it and then reported on it. So before we get to the flock, the surveillance of the day, can you just give us like an example or two that really stick out that from your community's point of view that you all really saw? Like this, I think like that was a great example. Extra pat downs at the airport. But we talk about maybe like surveillance. Are there cameras outside of mosques, which I know there are, but
Yeah.
give me something that's going to be like, I'll be like, holy shit. Like, because you obviously see and know about things that I do not see.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, for our community, right, it has run the full gamut of like, there's tech, right? There's like the actual digital surveillance, and cops are cops, whether they have a digital tool or not, right? They're posted up on the streets in Dorchester and Roxbury, right? And like unmarked black SUVs harassing people. So for some communities, it's like they're always going to be there. And I think an interesting point in this moment, people always talk about sanctuary when we talk about ICE and immigrants. And what comes up for Muslim folks is, the idea of sanctuary is like certain spaces like churches and religious spaces would not be touched by law enforcement. Mosques have been infiltrated by FBI informants for so long that it's a joke in our community to say like, oh yeah, obviously that person is an informant. But what we found, there's the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, which partners with local law enforcement, and they go out knocking on people's doors. We surveyed local Muslims. I think we surveyed about like 100 Muslim folks around the Boston area. 1 out of 10 had either been visited or their family had been visited by the FBI. Like 10% of our community deals with that. You'll hear about it when like leftists or other people get a door knock. They're freaking out like, oh my God, the FBI came to my door. In our community, that is just happening all the time. Like most of our Know Your Rights trainings are like, telling our aunties and uncles, don't offer them tea. Like, don't let them in the house. Don't talk to them, because they really prey on that, like, that shock of someone coming to your door. You got to like let them in. So there's that. There's like the social media surveillance, like our organization. A good example of this, we're clearly surveilled by BRIC. When the genocide started in Palestine, there was within the first 2 weeks, this was, I think, like October 18th, a city councilor proposed a pro-Israel resolution, and another city councilor in Boston proposed a ceasefire resolution. This was like last minute. We posted on our Instagram that people should come to the city council meeting and email their city councilors. And when people arrived to Boston City Hall, it was shut down. It was closed. There were hundreds of cops.
Yep.
They didn't want to let people in. When they did, they had locked off all the hallways. And one of the city councilors told me, she was like, oh, we got an alert about this. She was like, what did you do? You scared these cops today. She was like, you've been here so many times. And I was like, yeah, but when we talk about Palestine, when we talk about the war, they're going to read it a certain way. So like we have seen the direct impacts of that surveillance. We can't always find the evidence, but it's like obviously they are looking at our Instagram, which is kind of funny to me that they have paid staff just checking MJL's Instagram every day.
So let's go, before even, on the way to flock, ALPR. So this is license plates in particular. And actually, I'm kind of jumping the gun. How about this? One more wild card, World Cup. And I ask about the World Cup because I don't want to get too far into the marathon bombing because it's the same conversation. It's like a local 9/11, where it's just all of these things we can talk about that came out of it, whether there's surveillance methods and just things that we have found out about. But I mean, but it's the World Cup. It just happened. I can see very little critical coverage of in this regard besides ours anywhere about contracts and the surveillance shopping spree? Was there anything that came up? Clearly, we saw a lot of Muslim fans, right, and out there from so many different countries. So this was like an international affair. Did we learn anything? Did we see anything particular? Anything unusual? Anything new?
Yeah, what a good question. World Cup is like a huge topic for me personally. I'm Egyptian, so just I still feel really heated about it. I think what's interesting, because the stadium here is like outside of Boston, I didn't directly see what was happening, but I know folks have talked about, like heavy policing, of course, at every stadium. But I think what everybody saw was how African and Muslim teams were treated, which not only how they were treated by FIFA, but in terms of travel, like we have essentially an African and Muslim ban in place. It's incredibly hard for folks to travel to this country. I remember one of the players joking that he was like, I have a bad haircut because our support team, our support staff aren't here. Like they couldn't get into the country. So I had to
Right.
go with my terrible English to the barber and I have a bad haircut because of it. That's like low level impact, but like the way the Iranian team was shuffled in and out of the country, right?
They
One
had to
of
train
the
in Mexico, right, or something like that.
yeah, they
Yeah,
had to stay in Mexico, fly in and out. A Somali referee was, deported from the country at the
Yeah,
beginning, like not allowed in.
embarrassing. The whole from front to back, just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah.
but it's, that's an example of like how our folks are treated every day. Like when you think about ICE, folks are seeing what ICE is doing in the country. A lot of what's happening to, I would say, African and Muslim folks is in the airports and it's not visible because you're just not even getting in the country. They're sending you right back on the plane. And sometimes they're often checking people's phones to see like what social media you're following, like really heavy kind of surveillance.
That's really interesting. Can you talk about airports for a second? It's something that I think airports are kind of like, not to be crass, like, oh, I was going to say pornography. Like the technology often starts there, and then the rest of us get it, right? So this is like surveillance, not just VA. We're not just talking about VHS and DVD. We are talking about facial recognition. There are things that like we don't even prepare for. You go to the airport, suddenly it's like smile. We're going to do this, like these things. I'm guessing you know more about this stuff than the rest. So please, what
Yeah.
are we seeing at the what's hot and new at the airport these days that we're
Yeah.
going to
Oh God.
see at
Yeah.
the grocery store next week?
I mean, really important thing for people to know is you have less rights at the airport. Like the kind of know your rights materials folks get about interacting with police in general, it
Right.
is different in the airport. They can actually detain you. They can take your devices. It's happening to citizens all of the time. They're taking phones, laptops. So people are often shocked when it happens at an airport because, if you're on the street, you would think a cop can't just come up and like ask me these types of questions. And the questions that you get, especially from CBP, can be really invasive. Like for Muslim folks, it's often like, where do you go pray? Who did you vote for? What tribe are you part of? I mean, they are really asking wild questions, and you feel like I'm in this room that I'm not going to get out of unless I answer it. So there's a lot of horrific things that happen behind the scenes at the airports, and the technology that they have, the amount of information sharing between airlines and like DHS and CBP. A lot of folks are surprised when they get like if you get 4 S's on your boarding pass, that's like a whole other level of security screening that can cause you to like miss your flight. And it often is just you have a name similar to someone else on a terrorist watch list. There's all of these watch lists behind the scenes that they're using. But I think the other important thing to know is like for Boston, Logan Airport is actually notoriously bad for these things, especially for folks who are not citizens. So if you noticed, like last year when ICE was really getting going, there were a number of airport incidents where people were detained, including white folks. That was the surprise. Like, it's usually just us. All of them were at Boston Airport. So we actually tell people, like, if you're traveling internationally, and coming back into the country, maybe don't make Boston Logan Airport your point of entry, because we've seen, like, statistically in 2020, the U.S. killed General Qasem Soleimani in Iran. And what we like to do is we pair our bombings and our war with domestic policies. So they also deported about a dozen Iranian students that month who had, like, valid visas. Eight of the 12 were at Boston Airport. So we just know that, like, Boston Airport has a lot of this activity. We don't know why. But if you're traveling, like, make New York or a different, point of entry if possible.
Well, I was going to ask you why. I was going to ask why you think Boston has a bigger brick. Boston has heavier enforcement at Logan. I mean, I have a thought in it, but I mean, you must think about this, although you were saying you're not sure.
Yeah, it's different, Logan versus brick. Like, Logan is, CBP. We've heard, I think somebody who worked there had connections to the IDF, and maybe there were certain technologies being, like, piloted there. I also think it's just that Logan Airport is small. They have plenty of time. They have lots of time to, like, go through your phone and harass.
And this is the Customs and Border Patrol under Homeland Security you're talking about?
Yeah. Okay. It's predominantly CBP. ICE now is showing up more at the airports, but the day-to-day, like, CBP deports people, all of the time. And we have so many students coming in and out. So
that's
I think
what I was going to get at. Yeah.
Yeah, like with the universities here, that's a particular thing. And then brick, the fusion centers all basically started 20 years ago. A few years into the war on terror, they became a thing. I'm not sure how brick became one of the biggest. Obviously, like, the marathon bombing plays a role. That's why the counter extremism program came here to Boston. But I think it's also, like, we're a so-called progressive city or progressive state that loves the police, right? Like,
okay. We love that Mass State Police barracks. Logan Airport has its own Mass State Police barracks, right?
Yeah,
as well, in addition to everything else.
Massport Police too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got a lot of cops for such a progressive
I would
state.
say, before we get to the topic of the hour, I just do want to know about, like, I'm sure you even say, like, the war on terror, like, we don't even put quotes around anymore like this.
Yeah.
What about the actual war on terror? Like, what do you hear from experts about? Oh, I mean, there are a lot of, like, sensible people, even in law enforcement, I've talked to over the years, whether on or off the record, like, you're making this huge pile to, haystack to find a needle in. It's not helpful. That every single person is a terrorist. This thinking, and yet we don't seem to be getting away from it. But are they? I mean, how? And I'm sure an actual terrorist bombing is the suspect is stopped every now and then. But what of the actual, like, what is your group follow for that? I'm sure you got to be more abreast of all of that stuff than any. So how do these two things? Where's the intersection of them? What do we know about what's really going on? Does any of this help?
Yeah, I mean, brick didn't stop the marathon bombing. The FBI didn't stop it. They all were, funded, well-resourced, had plenty of surveillance back then. But, like, the reality is, all of this so-called counterterrorism infrastructure, like, we don't even talk about it as terrorism. We talk about it as political violence, because if you actually name it as political violence, then you would have to talk about the political reasons, which is what they don't want to do, right? They don't want to actually address why political violence happens, or that this country is the most violent country in the world, and maybe the most violent that has ever existed.
The hell you say? So, yes, right.
Yeah,
I mean, what a shock.
maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
Were those Israeli bombs that were being dropped on Gaza? I feel like they might have been made in some other country. What country could that be? Gosh, how did they get over there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, it's so hard. I do think in the past couple of years, like, people have opened their eyes. Like, it's shocking. The Iran war is the most unpopular war we've ever launched.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Right? Like, people are actually recognizing, like, oh yeah, maybe if we're the country that bombs little kids and started by bombing a school in Iran, maybe there's a reason that people supposedly hate us. So I do think, like, the general public is shifting, and because it used to be that people wanted to call other people terrorists, and our thing as an organization is, we're not asking for equal opportunity surveillance. We're not saying, like, no, we need to catch white terrorists too. We're saying, like, this whole concept around political violence is flawed. It's not addressing anything, but it's really, it is doing what it's intended to do, which is repression and, like, surveilling social movements and going after people's political ideologies. And now under the Trump administration, it's blatant, but everything he's using came from previous administrations. Democrats and Republicans have loved the war on terror.
So there's the war on terror, right? And there's the war for convenience. And our next topic, automatic license plate readers, come out of both. And, you know, because it's like, whatever can we sell people at the moment? Sometimes it's both. So with ALPRs, a lot of them came into being, and we could talk municipality by municipality, but as you know, for traffic enforcement, for finding stolen cars, as if that's been a problem since like 1988. So can you tell us a little bit about how you saw them come on the scene? And I think we've actually, our organization has gotten maybe perhaps, you know, documents from regarding, you know, ALPR, you know, from you. You know, I think this is something you've been active on. So yeah, how have you seen in, you know, Massachusetts, this technology come to be and get accepted and be used in different places by different, you know, not just by the cops, sometimes by the transit division, and then they give the cops the information. So
yeah, everyone's getting these license plate readers now. I'll say first, like, yeah, everyone talks about Flock, and it's important to know that's just a brand. License plate readers are like a technology that has many brands. And the way I've been talking about it is as vehicle recognition, because I think people hear license plate reader and they think, oh, it's just looking at my license plate and nothing else. Like, no, honey, they are tracking your vehicle. The point is to track you in a similar way that we think about facial recognition. And, you know, license plate readers have been around, but honestly, the heavy use really started in the past, like, year or two. Like, they've really exploded around the country, particularly because of Flock. I don't know, you know, where Flock got their funding or what their business model is, but it was very effective because suddenly everyone had Flock. Like, a good example is Boston police had, I think they had about 10 license plate readers from the company 3M. And they weren't even really using them anymore.
They didn't like them. Were those the ones that went under the seat? And there was a rumor in the department that they shrunk. They made your sperm count go down, from what I understand, for a while.
That sounds like something a cop would believe.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I don't know. I was one of those crazy Fourth Amendment advocates that spread the rumor, but
also
not
possible.
That's not even a joke. But I don't know and I know you're, you know the technology, but I don't know if you know the answer to this. From what I recall, a lot of it was like selective. Like, if I'm looking for this license plate, I can send it out almost like an APB, and then the cops are driving around with these things.
Yeah.
And if it hits that license plate, as opposed to almost now, even I run with the assumption that everything's being collected, and then we have to ask you how long you're retaining the data. So you tell us this is the same device. Can you talk about like same device, different usages? Also, sometimes they tell us the camera is capable of facial recognition, but we're not doing it. So just tell us what do we need to know about? What do we talk to us like we're we don't know nothing about this. Like what's the 101 on this?
Yeah, I mean, you clearly do know a lot. But yeah, there's the cameras, right? And it's interesting. People are freaking out about license plate reader cameras. There are cameras everywhere. Like we are already heavily surveilled
Simplest, safe, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, like Boston, there's cameras everywhere. Brick by itself has tons of cameras, and there's both public, like law enforcement type cameras, and a lot of businesses implementing cameras who are happy to give that information to law enforcement. So yeah, it's really good to think about, there's a camera and then there's this technology where for license plate readers or like vehicle recognition, you might need a fancy enough camera to like really get a good look at the car. So not every camera could turn into a license plate reader necessarily. And that's why they're being marketed now in this way where like, they're implementing these particular cameras mostly on poles. A lot of them have like solar power chargers for them powered that way. And like you said, both because they're everywhere and they're fixed locations. It's much easier now with like the expansion of the technology and AI, especially for them to just find you wherever you are, right? If through a particular brand, they have access to all the license plate readers across the country, chances are you got spotted on some camera at some point and they could probably track you down. So I think that's why people are really understanding now like how creepy this is. We've been building up to it, unfortunately. So now it's this much bigger problem, and you have license plate reader cameras everywhere. Some of them are mobile, like you said, like yeah, sometimes they're going to be on a cop car or like driving around, but especially in the past year, there's been like major installation and deployment of the kind of fixed license plate reader cameras, often on like a pole near a big intersection. And like you said, it can be law enforcement, it can be Department of Transportation. One unique thing that we're seeing now in Massachusetts, just to freak everyone out even more, some state legislation passed about school buses. And the idea is that apparently 3 times a day, on average, somebody passes a school bus that has the stop sign arm out. And to catch them, they're implementing, I think
3 times a day across the whole state.
I'm not, yeah, I think
probably per town, I would think,
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I don't remember if it was like per town or the whole state. Also, a state notorious for bad driving, but the solution is license plate readers. So they're getting Axon Bus Patrol. It's literally marketed for this particular use. License plate reader cameras to put on the school buses. I think Chicopee, Quincy, and at least one other city so far have implemented them, and it's being incentivized that like you'll get the money back through fining the vehicles.
And I can already tell you that I already have a tip on this, that the damn thing starts taking the picture when the thing starts coming out, and these towns are already flooded with people fighting the pictures. Say, look at the picture. I'm 1,000 feet away and I'm not moving. What the fuck are you? And are the companies factoring in the amount of bureaucracy that's going to have to go in to processing 1,000 complaints here? Anyway, all right. So here we are. It's a National Week of Action Against ALPRs. I want to talk. My first question is: does this work sometimes feel lonely? And then what's it like? This is an organization, DFLOCK, DEFLOCK. I think people can find it. NoALPRs.com. And they are organizing this week of action, but they also organize and have resources in general. So when it comes to this topic, what is it like to, I don't know what level the membership necessarily, but like, what's it like to at least have kind of a federation, an organization that is doing similar things that you can share ideas. What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, definitely working on surveillance and working on the war on terror, especially, and like US imperialism, Islamophobia. It has been very lonely in the past. Again, Muslims, we're a really small community, but like so heavily impacted by violence abroad and here, and it's been hard. But I will say in the past 3 years, especially, unfortunately, because of a live stream genocide, there has been just such growing solidarity around Palestine. And I think between like Black Lives Matter, Palestine, all of these issues, ICE, I think now there's just so much more awareness about surveillance. So it is really cool. And, this year, even just in the past couple of weeks, now everyone hates license plate readers. I'm like, wow, I love that everyone knows what I'm talking about. You know, in the same way in 2020, before 2020, people were like, what do you mean abolish the police? And then people started showing up being like, yeah, okay, I kind of get it now. So, it's growing over time, and it's really we love that, we have an organization here. We've grown a lot. We have lots of members, and we have a lot of like coalition building and movement building that we've, done around these issues. And I think with license plate readers, especially, that is across the board something everyone hates, like right wing, left wing folks, which is complicated to think about, like how do we take these issues on, how do we move folks, but it is really cool to see how many people are seeing this as an issue and trying to take it on. And this National Week of Action, kind of grew out of like, in the past year, Flock was showing up and other ALPRs were showing up in so many cities, and people were asking, what do we do? What do we do? And like, there's very few organizations that know how to do that. We're glad that we're, one of them. So we've done some webinars with these folks, like with the national crew. And we're really excited. Like, we're coordinating with a bunch of folks in Massachusetts about some actions here and like educating folks here.
We always say, we're the Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism. We're very much Cambridge and Somerville also. I'd say even more, right? And I don't ever use Cambridge as a comparison point for any other place in America for any number of reasons, right? Everything. I mean, the property is split up differently because of all the nonprofits.
Well, Harvard and MIT are there, man.
Harvard and MIT, the crazy education, but also the city government is super weird. But this was a place where ALPRs where the contract was canceled. But also there's Dayton, Ohio. Are there any, whether it's the particular municipality or a method that you've seen? Is there a playbook right now? And by the way, people can go to the web, the URL to DFLOCK and NoALPRs.com and see some examples. But what do you see as just some good practices? We've seen black bagging. We've also, by the way, last thing I'll say is we've also seen Flock not give a shit and continue to put cameras up in more than one place. They were told to get lost. And I keep saying, by the way, what if I got caught doing that? Would I get in trouble? Anyway, so
that's what happened. That's what happened in Cambridge, and it's why they ended the contract. They had like started putting them up. Then months later, when people learned about ALPRs, there was pushback. The city council paused the contract, and Flock kept putting them up, and that pissed the city council up, like off enough to like stop the contract. I will say, in terms of playbook, we're trying to actually put some new stuff out there, because in a lot of cities, what we've seen is like people are pushing back on the flock contract. And maybe they're ending the flock contract specifically, but they're not actually stopping license plate readers. Like, this just happened in Salem, Massachusetts. They said, yeah, we'll get rid of flock. We're going to get Axon instead. Or maybe they're going to get Motorola Vigilant, which the Massachusetts State Police have, which proudly works with ICE, like directly works with ICE. So people are not realizing, it's more than this brand. We have to think about the technology as a whole. So we haven't seen anyone do this yet, but for us as MJL, we're really pushing that, cities should just ban the technology completely. There are some folks pushing for like data regulation models. I think that's just nonsense. Like, these tech companies always have ways of getting around it. Law enforcement have ways of getting around that. And we have seen how dangerous this technology is. There's like reports every day of cops using it to track people who had abortions.
Every day. Today, it's a guy buying weed in Wisconsin and going back over the border. There's fucking weed. Oh, we're going back. We're using flock technology to go back in time to arrest people. I mean, absolutely.
Well, they're using it to track people between legal and illegal states, and then nail them on crossing state lines with, illegal weed or whatever. Yeah.
It's like every bad comedian, good comedians joke about how, like, this is what we're using the technology. You're going to tell us how great this technology is, and you're going to use it to bust a guy with an eighth of weed. I mean, just crazy. So, with this week of action, what in particular is it? Just a regular kind of let people know campaign? Do you have something in particular planned? And by the way, for those, this is the National Week of Action Against ALPRs, organized by DFLOC, noalprs.com.
Yeah. So for us in Massachusetts, like our organization, Muslim Justice League, we're working with a bunch of people to like lead some of that here, both for the week of action and going forward. So we'll have research coming out soon that'll show folks like which cities in Massachusetts have the highest number of license plate readers, highest density, like where should people actually start organizing. For example, if you look at the DFLOC map, you'll see a lot in Medford, but it's not Medford Police. It's all Tufts University. Tufts has like their own deployment that's as big as some of the cities. So we want to be able to show folks like in Lowell, Springfield, Quincy, Boston, Worcester, and a few other places, there's really high concentrations of license plate readers. For us, we're also tying this back to everyone's favorite thing, BRIC. So a bunch of cities are getting license plate reader funding through BRIC, and BRIC is doing its own regional network. So Boston and Quincy are the two kind of big ones that they're starting with. And then I think there's a few other cities within BRIC, because BRIC has 9 cities officially that are supposed to be part of that. And Boston itself, like the Boston police did a flock pilot last year, and now they're actually piloting Motorola and Axon instead of flock. Oh. So they're like shopping around for different.
That's news. I was not aware of that. Thank you very much. And
yes.
And so they're but is this going to be like the bikes in China, just like abandoned poles with old cameras all over the place? Like, I just can't even. And by the way, I think this is a basic thing is like, know what's up. Ask for, if you're reported, ask for the manuals. How are they conducting these things? And also, and not to like elevate before the end of our interview, which I appreciate. This has been fantastic. I keep wondering, as far as, I know Flock is already doing drone stuff. Is it, how do you advocate without like just advocating to the moment, and then it's like, oh great, we got rid of all the polls, and the second that legislation is signed, the fucking drone comes flying over your head. Which I know, like in Baltimore, they've had these like sophisticated memory drones for years and I know they have it here too. Although I don't know, I like to think sometimes I like to at least go by at least what we're told, like that Boston's not using facial rec, stuff like this. We could deal with the lies later, but as far as what we know and where we may be headed, what do we know about drones and ALPRs and drone? Like, how is the next level? How close are we right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I'll say this and then say actually an organizing recommendation that's important based on what you said. Yeah, now drones as first responders is a thing. Yeah.
Great.
Like, great. Instead of an EMT, it's gonna be like a drone that shows up, which like again, I mean, not to be like super heavy, but it's heavy for my community where like when we talk about drones in Muslim majority
Yeah,
countries, we're talking about drones
main
that kill us,
kill. Yeah.
Yeah.
that show up and bomb people.
Yeah.
The idea of drones as first responders in the US is so
Oh my God.
dystopic. But I think our playbook as MJL and important in this moment is people are really thinking about the tech companies. And I love that. Like, yes, we need to understand that these companies are driven by a profit. They're willing to get and sell our data. But the primary buyers are law enforcement. Like, you can't just talk about Flock and not talk about the law enforcement institutions behind it and how much money is going to the police and DHS to buy all of this. So for us, really the recommendation is don't just think about each of these technologies. You need to get out of BRIC. Like for the city of Cambridge, it doesn't quite matter that they stopped their own license plate readers. They're still part of BRIC. Technically, they could access the BRIC regional license plate reader network. So we need folks to think like a step beyond that. BRIC is really such a huge source of information sharing, federal collaborations here, just so much that's happening through BRIC and other kind of, federal task forces. So I think it's more than just chasing like, let's end this specific contract and then you're playing whack-a-mole. For us, it's about abolishing BRIC, right? Get rid of the source of surveillance, like the nexus itself.
And of course, I always think, for those of us who were around, 9/11 time, there was a lot of clamoring for why weren't more people talking? Why weren't more people communicating? And I know this is probably, I don't know what for me, it's my dummy position is like, well, they've had the chance now. They've shown that they're not capable of communicating. Now I know it's more sophisticated than that, but and I hate to give you the old NPR question like the from the opposite. I must ask you this question, but what do you say to people who say there has to be some coordination? What is a fair level of coordination?
There was coordination after 9/11. I highly recommend reading a report from some movement organizations called DHS Open for Business. What happened after 9/11 was coordination between law enforcement, government agencies, and tech companies to be like, great, we can all make money off of this. We can make surveillance tech. They were like, yeah, you should create DHS. Like, please give us a reason to make new surveillance technology. So this idea that like they weren't talking, there were plenty of communications between law enforcement agencies at that time. None of them are communicating about like, oh, I don't know, maybe we should stop funding Israel and that would actually solve a 1,000 problems that we have, including a good amount of political violence. So again, I think it's just like that kind of information sharing time and time again. It's not stopping this kind of violence. It is giving cops a way to stalk their ex-girlfriends, apparently.
Yes. And these cameras have video now, it turns out.
You can
Chris,
quantify them now, Jason.
I was going to say, it turns out that these cameras are updatable to run as video cameras, not just as photo readers. And, the head of Flock is denying this, and people prove that it wasn't, that he'd already announced it earlier, and it's getting worse.
Yeah,
right?
it is getting
Not better.
worse. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's getting worse, and it's been so cool to see the pushback on license plate readers. So we're really excited about this week of action too. Like we'll have we haven't decided the date yet, but I'll share back with you all when we have the date, hopefully later tonight actually. We'll have a meetup in Boston one day that week to train people on how to spot the different cameras because again, there's kind of three big brands. So we'll show people like, how do you find them? And now that Boston police removed Flock and brought two different brands, we're going to walk around together and try to map some of the new cameras that came up. I think, you know, there will be some stuff happening in Quincy and maybe some of the other locations. And down the line, we'll do a teach-in in the near future online too, so folks can come see the research that we've done on like who has the most license plate readers and what you can do about it. Like you said, like what's the playbook to get organized to actually get rid of them, not just stop one contract. And then like do data regulation or whatever. For us, I think this is a really good moment to actually ban license plate readers. I hope folks at the Massachusetts state level start thinking about that too, but we're really going to start at that like city local level.
That's great. And
So,
I think,
so folks can go to MuslimJusticeLeague.org. We're running that URL down on the bottom of the screen for more information. Chris, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was going to say I said you get it's the tour. I love the idea of the foot tour. It could be called the lack of freedom trail.
Yeah, we did a bike ride. So almost a year ago, we did a bike ride and mapped a bunch in Cambridge and Boston because at the time they both had Flock. Now that Flock is gone from both of those cities, we'll do, you know, some downtown Boston mapping of the new license plate readers. And if you're not based in Boston, you should still come help us map them, and then you can take that back to your neighborhood, and in your neighborhood then you'll be able to, you know, map them yourselves.
Totally important.
Great.
All right, well, thank you so much. We took a lot of your time, but we got a ton out of it, and I'm so excited. I learned a lot as well. So yeah, we'll keep the information out there. Let us know what's going on, and we'll share with our readers.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is so great.
Thanks, Fatema Ahmad of the Muslim Justice League. And we'll be back. Chris and I will be back unless Fatema wants to come back. That's always cool. There's more we could discuss next week. Usually Tuesdays at 8 o'clock, but who knows? Like this week, it's Wednesday at 3. We don't know, but next week. So see folks later, and we're going to end the stream.